Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see all of you here. I want to welcome everyone. And let's take a moment. We're welcoming those that are watching us from other venues besides this, but we would also like to take a moment to just greet your neighbor, if you would. Thank you. Thank you for being here. A little reminder that if you have devices that might go ringing or banging during the service, we'd like you to silence those devices. I want to let you know that I'm Penny Featherstone, your service leader. I haven't been up here in a while, and I'm delighted to be back. We have centering music and a video, so please enjoy. Well, this is announcements. Thank you, I need help. Okay, there are a lot of announcements. Lori, I think Winterberg is going to do the first one, or I'll do one while she's coming up here. For those interested in learning more about Project 2025, we will have Sylvia Lake here for second hour today. So if you are able and interested, please stay after the service for that second hour.
Thanks, Penny. Lori Winterberg, you guys know me. And this is the second announcement, and you've seen it posted around, maybe heard about it, is that starting next Sunday, a little bit of an experiment, we're calling it not a yard sale. Next Sunday, after services, you'll be able to walk through the conference room. There'll be stuff, nice stuff, on conference tables, and you can help yourself to it. There's no pricing. However, you're asked to, once you've selected your stuff, consider how much you think it might be worth, then consider what you have, what you can donate, and then donate some money to the church. You can donate by cash, check, or the give now sort of thing. Then take your goodies home with you. That's it. It's kind of recycle, but free cycle. So that'll be next Sunday after services and the following Sunday, November 3rd, after services. And we'll let you know afterwards how it went. It might be something we choose to repeat periodically, or it may be just a fun experiment that we did. But I'm hoping that it's something that we might do maybe a couple times a year. Thanks a bunch. Oh, and by the way, after services today, we'll need some help setting up those tables in the conference room. Several tables are already set up, but we'll need a few more of those great big long tables to set up so that the donors can put their things out on the tables. Yes, yes, so the donors can set their stuff out there for you guys to take. Thank you.
Next Sunday, October 27th, we will celebrate the lives of members that have passed Charlotte this year. Charlotte Crane, J.J. Jackson, Marianne Kelly, and friend of the church, Beverly Miller, who is the daughter of a member, Annabelle Miller. Please join us after the service. After the service. No, during the service? During the service, to remember these people that have given to this church for some many, many years. If you have not yet been contacted about a house meeting for just Pensacola, and if you have questions about that, I don't see Paula, but you can ask me or some other people I'll hook you up with about house meetings. Please let us know. We want everyone to be able to participate. The House meetings are a listening portion of our justice work with Just Pensacola. In October, we listened to many members of our congregations to hear what local injustices we are affected by. In November, we will have a large meeting with other church congregations to hear what has been reported and to select the projects we want to address during the year. Then starts a period of study, preparing to present those injustices to the powers who can make changes. That presentation will be done at the big Nehemiah action in the spring. And it's a good way to get to know one another. A reminder, the Heathen Kindred meet after the service today. They meet twice a month. And once again, they are organizing a trick-or-treat hunt, treasure hunt, which will be October 27th after church. That's next Sunday. 2 Sundays? No, at 2 o'clock. At 2 o'clock. We need your help. We need baked goods, cupcakes, brownies, Rice Krispies, treats, etc. We will need people to stay after Sunday service to wrap the baked goods, to set up the tables, and pile up the chairs. We need people to help at the event, which will be from 2 to 4. People to staff the tables, to be ushers, and to watch the hallways. To help, also to help with a cakewalk and raffles. If you can help, please see Mark or Gay, and they're both seated over here. You want to make yourselves known after the service. And we got great support last year, and the event was a smashing success. Let's do it again.
There's a sign-up sheet, too, out here.
On that bulletin board?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a sign-up sheet if you want to help on the bulletin board. And one of the nice things that happened last year was this was advertised and brought people from the community in. So this is a good way to encourage our outreach. Fun and Fellowship would like to invite you to Bands on the Beach, Tuesday, October 29th at 7 p.m. We will meet at the Casino Beach Gulfside Pavilion to watch The Lads, a British invasion tribute band. Bring a chair and snacks, and call Barbara Wright to RSVP. Hope to see you there. I think I hit everything, and someone will let me know if I didn't. So I don't know if I mentioned that this is the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. It's been my home for 30 plus years, and it is a very welcoming congregation in many different ways. We'll have a centering video right now and music.
More love, the heavens are blessing, the angels are calling, O Zion, more love. More love, more love, the heavens are blessing, the angels are calling, O Zion, more love. If ye love not each other in daily communion, how can ye love God whom ye have not seen? If ye love not each other in daily communion, how can ye love God whom ye have not seen? More love, the heavens are blessing, the angels are calling. O Zion, more love, more love, more love.
We light this chalice to remember. It is love that has called us here, and it is love that leads us on. We will answer the call of love.
We will have our opening words now. These are responsive words, so I will read the standard lines, and if you'll read in italics. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence.
We come with all abilities and strengths.
Our fears and anxieties, our loves and our hopes. Here we need not be anything other than who we are and are called to be. Where the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place.
Together we make it a holy place.
And then if you'll stand, we'll sing hymn number 6 together. Just as long as I have breath, the words are on the screen or in your hymnal.
covenant. Please join me. Love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. You may be seated, and we will now have a time for all ages with Claire. Enjoy, young ones of all ages.
Well, good morning. I am glad to be here today for the Time for All Ages, and I have a friend with me who's going to help today with a special jetpack made by a very special child of mine. This is Jenny, the jet pig, and she flew in from who knows how many miles, hundreds of miles away, to be here with us today because she knew that we were going to be talking about the values that are at the center of our UU faith. And she knows that is so important, and she wanted to be here for it because she had a great idea about how we could remember these new one-word values that the UUA has adopted. We'll be talking more about that later in the service. But she thought it would be helpful to do this little exercise. The problem is you need human fingers to do it, and she unfortunately has none of those. And so she asked if you would all be willing to help demonstrate with your human fingers, which there's an abundance of in this room, if you would demonstrate these values. So if you could hold up your human fingers. Nice, thank you. And we'll start with one finger. So Jenny's going to tell us what we need to do. Okay. So for one finger, you're going to use your finger and bend it and let it grow up like a plant, like a new shoot of a plant that's just growing up. And this will help us remember the UU value of transformation. So transformation, that value about growing, changing spiritually and as a community. We value transformation. Okay. Yes. For number 2, hold up 2 fingers and turn them sideways. It's going to look kind of like an equals sign, and that will help us remember the UU value of equity. Equity, which is not about everyone getting the same thing, but about everyone getting what they need to be able to thrive. That is one of our UU values. All right? Yes, she told me she's getting a little jealous of you all being able to do this with your human fingers, but keep it up because she is loving it. 3 fingers will help us remember the value of pluralism. Looks a little bit like a group of people there. So 3 people. Pluralism is that UU value about valuing a diversity of voices and celebrating them and recognizing that we are better when we are more together. Okay? Yes. 4 fingers. This one's a little tricky. She feels a little self-conscious about this one because technically you'll see all 5 fingers, but we're just going to focus on these 4 and ball them up into a fist. All right, ignore the thumb. This is 4 fingers to help us remember the UU value of justice, like that protest stance for justice, right? The UU value of pursuing social justice as an important aspect of our faith. Yes, okay, this is why it was tricky because we kind of had 2 that use all 5 fingers. If you use all 5 fingers and create a palm together and then turn it up in a stance of generosity, the UU value of giving, of our time, our energy, and of a stance of having an open palm to the world. All right? Oh, she says I'm going to have to put her down for this one. Okay, don't fly away. For 6 fingers, this one is actually not one of the 6 values. This one is the one at the center. Love is at the center of the values. So you'll draw a heart in the center of your palm. Love is at the center. And finally, she's whispering something. 7 fingers, you will take one palm this way and walk your fingers over. And notice the web. Maybe you see a web of wrinkles. Maybe you can even see the web of veins underneath. And you can bow your fingers down, like in reverence and just to explore and appreciate the web of interdependence that is all around us. So, thank you, Jenny, for those. Oh, and she's saying there's something special that happens if you put the values in a different order. So she's going to show us on the screen now what happens if we put the values in a different order with this fancy PowerPoint trick she learned to do. It spells jet pig. So, thank you. Jenny, the jet pig, is so excited to be here. She hopes that when you see her around the church, because she likes us so much that she's going to hang out at this particular church, she hopes that when you see her around, you will test your memory, see if you can remember what jet pig stands for, and remember our UU values. Thank you.
This is our time to get in touch with one another. We light candles for joys and concerns. Our first candle will be for the things that are going on in the world that we care about. And if you would come up on the sides, if you have a joy, a sorrow, an event in your life you want to share, and we'll have you come up and we'll light a candle for you and let you say your name and what you would like to share. those joys and sorrows that are in our heart and not expressed at this time. Let's sing the children to their classes. Go now in peace, go now in peace. Let the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Okay, offering. So I was just thinking about Jet Pig, or Jenny the Jet Pig, and that love is at the center of what we are about. And we show our love in many different ways, with our time, with our talent, and with our treasure. This is the time in the service where the ushers will come up and pass a basket, and if you are motivated, we hope that you will show your love. And we'll have we have music from Michael. So Claire Helton is a member of UUCP, a hospice bereavement coordinator, chaplain, and former pastor. She follows denominational politics in the way that some people follow football, and I'm among those now. So she is delighted to have the opportunity to dig in and learn more about what motivates and unites Unitarian Universalists throughout the denomination. Please welcome Claire.
What I wrote was how normal people follow football, and Penny didn't want to say that and be mean to me, I think, so thank you. Well, good morning. It is a privilege to have the chance to speak today and to speak about something as central to Unitarian Universalism as the core values and principles that guide our faith. So the title of today's talk is Where Did the Principles Go? Unpacking the Unitarian Universalist Association's new, we'll put that in quotes, values. Because as we'll see, there's nothing all that new about them. This past summer, the UUA voted at the National General Assembly to adopt a revised version of Article 2 of our bylaws. So the part of our bylaws that contained the often recited list of the principles of our faith and the less often recited but still important list of the sources of our tradition. And so don't worry if you're not familiar with the principles and the sources. We're going to walk through them in a minute. But I want to say first that I can imagine that for some of us, maybe those who've been around for a decade or two or three or four, shifting away from the language of the principles and sources that our denomination has had pretty much intact since the 80s is no small shift. For others who may be newer to UUism, it's possible that aside from that video that we often play week to week, this language may be less familiar and therefore less emotionally weighted. But there is emotion to it. As I read through the report from the committee that spearheaded this work, I was struck by their findings that the seemingly outsized role that these two short bodies of text play in the lives of so many UUs. They remarked that in a tradition where we have no shared creed or required dogmas, nor do we even rely on the same shared sacred texts among ourselves, these two statements of our shared principles and the sources from which we draw our faith have in many cases filled that gap and become a sort of bedrock foundation for our shared and inclusive faith that we could build on. And so they have not taken this work lightly. And though I was still very new to UUism, to the UU world when this process was ongoing, so I'm not sure to what extent any of our members may have been aware of or been involved in this process, there was a lengthy multi-year review and recommendation process conducted by that committee that involved input from, I think it said upwards of 10,000 UUs across the country. Our guiding question as we explore this topic today, I invite us to approach it with a spirit of curiosity. Perhaps that question might be about what it means for us as Unitarian Universalists to be part of a living tradition and how these new-ish values might reflect who it is we've always been, as well as who we're becoming together. So my hope is that in exploring this together, we will both broaden our understanding and deepen our sense of connection to the larger tradition of which this congregation is a part. So to remind us of our starting point, let's revisit the video of the principles that was made by our own Laura Keith King, featuring the voices of many different members of this congregation. We'll watch that together now.
The Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola, the 8 Principles.
Number 1, the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Number 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relation.
Number 3, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation.
Number 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Number 5, the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregation and in society at large.
Number 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
Number 7, respect for the interdependent web of existence,
of which we are all a part.
Number 8, active commitment to dismantle racism and other oppression in ourselves and our institutions.
Love that version where we have all the voices of different folks in our congregation. So to begin, let's go back to the beginning, at least the beginning of the UUA, which was formed when the Unitarians merged with the Universalists in 1961. So both traditions were much older than that, but for our purposes today, we'll start there. You can see on the screen the original principles that were adopted in that year, and some of that language might be familiar to longtime UUs. You'll see plenty of elements that have been carried over to today. The free and disciplined search for truth would become our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The reference to the great prophets and teachers of humanity, as well as the Judeo-Christian heritage, would later be moved from the principles into the sources, but it did stick around. And the emphases on the worth of each person, the democratic process, as well as the values of justice and peace would be retained as well. However, the original version also included lots of man speak, so man, brotherhood, men, hence the first major revision in the UUA's history in 1984, so 2 decades in, that was brought about by the UU Women's Federation and other feminist voices. And as you can see in those original 1984, sorry, not original, but the 1984 7 principles, the version proposed by those feminist groups and adopted in 1984 should probably sound familiar. This version replaced the gendered language with gender-neutral expressions, and in good eco-feminist form, it also added the 7th principle, which had not been a part of the original 6 at all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So remarkably, after seeing that much change in the first 2 decades of this young denomination, over the next nearly 40 years, or actually 40 years, from 1984 to this past summer in 2024, the principles have remained in that same form, serving as a touchstone for UUs for all of that time. The only major caveat to that is the introduction of a grassroots movement among UU organizers, not to change any of the existing principles, but to adopt an 8th principle addressing systemic racism and other institutional oppressions. So, beginning in 2013, while the UUA as a national body was already in preliminary conversations about the revisions that we're going to talk about today, so they didn't take formal steps to officially adopt the 8th principle as a national body. This grassroots movement led to many individual congregations, including our own, choosing to adopt some version of that top 8th principle that was proposed as a way to acknowledge the role of active anti-racism and anti-oppression work as a part of our commitment to living our faith. And as you'll see, when we get to the text of the newly adopted Article 2, the language and the impact of that 8th principle movement is clear. In fact, Dr. Paula Cole-Jones, who was the initiating force behind that 8th principle grassroots movement, was a member of the review team that developed the final text that we adopted this summer. So that brings us up to speed on the principles, and now we'll look quickly at the sources before we jump to present day. So the sources emerged as their own separate list in that 1984 update that was led by feminist voices. And what I noticed as I looked at this trajectory is that in creating this list in the 80s, UUs were able to massively expand what seemed to count as an official source of inspiration. The original 1961 founding documents referenced drawing on sources of inspiration from great teachers in every age and tradition, but they only referenced one by name. No one will be shocked that it was the Judeo-Christian heritage. They always seem to get preferential treatment. To my mind, it created this sort of first among equals effect. But in creating a separate list of sources 20 years later, UUs were able to represent more concretely their commitment to both pluralism and inclusivity, naming alongside the Judeo-Christian heritage transcendent experiences of awe, the words of prophetic leaders from various traditions, the teachings of world religions, and the teachings of humanism, reason, and science. So the next major revision, and the only other revision that we've seen to the sources, was the addition in 1995 to that list of the teachings on earth-centered traditions. So we'll bring up our timeline, and that brings us to present day. So to sum up, the original principles were laid out in the 1961 founding documents. They were expanded into 7 principles in the new list of sources 20 years later in 1985 or 4. Another decade later, we added the last source in 1995. And then just about a decade ago, in 2013, the Eighth Principle movement began around the time the UUA was starting down this road of revising Article 2 entirely, which leads us to the question, why? Why revise and why now? So the first and most concrete answer is because the bylaws require it. When we say that we are part of a living tradition, we mean it. So the UUA's bylaws require a review process for its guiding documents once every 15 years. And considering the glacial rate that change happens in most of religious life, and especially coming out of my history as a pastor in another denomination, I was floored by that information. Every 15 years, you have to review your founding documents. But it absolutely tracks with the UU commitment to avoid becoming a creedal religion. So the Article 2 committee and the many thousands of UUs who gave feedback on the new changes also characterized this shift as being not so much about changing our values as it is about deepening our commitment to them. So the new model incorporates one-word values. And my initial thought was, wow, one word is a lot fewer words for what I would very much characterize as a word-loving denomination. We like to talk and think and talk about our thinking. But the reality is that although we do have this wonderful new one-word value model, and we can put that image up on the screen now of our values flower, the full text of Article 2 actually creates even more depth and a beautiful liturgical structure of definition and covenant for each value. So we'll walk through each of these new but not really new values now so you can see what I mean. So the new model begins by acknowledging that love is at the center of our faith. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. And we are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. And then, identifying them as inseparable from one another, it lays out those values as follows. And I have taken the liberty of putting them in JetPig order in honor of Jenny. Justice. So you'll see here the model that each of those values will follow, starting with a succinct definition of what the value means for us, followed by a commitment, what we covenant to do as a result of holding this value. So to UUs, justice means that we work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities, drawing on the language of MLK there, where all thrive. And our commitment is that we covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large. So you can clearly see right off the bat the impact the Eighth Principle movement had on this document. The next value is equity, which means to UUs that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. And to live out that value, we covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Next is transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. I love the honesty of that. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. And what this means practically is that we covenant to learn from each other in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. And finally, interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. This means that we commit to protect the earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. And we will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. So that's it. Those are the new Unitarian Universalist Association values, which is what we're now calling what used to be the principles. And so what about the sources, that list of places and traditions from which we draw inspiration for our faith? So the new Article 2, rather than continuing the model of listing out the sources that shape our faith, which is a sort of prescriptive approach, it aims instead simply to describe how and why UUs might view something as a source of inspiration. So rather than trying to create a comprehensive list that will always fall short of someone's experience, we now have this statement that names direct transcendent experiences as well as sacred, secular, and scientific understandings. And that's as specific as it gets. It then focuses in on our responsibility to the traditions that we draw from, that we respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which these sources were created and are currently practiced, noting that we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. So hopefully you see what I mean when I say that there is not all that much that's new. The principles and the sources are still as present and animating this document just as they have animated this tradition for so many years. Personally, I appreciate that this model makes it easier to talk about what it means to be a UU to someone who might never have heard of us. Whether it's Jenny the Jet Pig and her acronym or the hand motion method, the concise language of one-word values gives us a jumping off point, and it's a lot easier to remember than the principles, no matter how many weeks in a row we've heard Laura's wonderful video. Maybe some of you can recite it, but I can't. But aside from being easier to remember in their one-word format, I also find it really beautiful that we now have these long-form versions of each of the values with the definition and the covenant and commitment that follows. So the implication is that our values mean little if we don't live them out. And so these guiding documents now give us a benchmark to hold ourselves accountable to the things that we say we believe, and there is power in that. This faith is and always has been a living tradition. So as we take in these changes at the denominational level and begin to imagine what they might mean for our particular congregation and for us as individual UUs, may the image of love at the center be our guide. In the words of UU minister and scholar Rebecca Parker, there is a love holding us, a love that will not let us go. In every moment of life, we are held in a web of connection, care, and potential transformation. May we embody that transformation together. Amen.
Number 131 is our closing hymn, and there may be a little ad-lib in here, and so just follow along. And you can groove.
Time
After our closing words, Claire will extinguish our chalice. And our closing words is another responsive reading. So you'll come in second, and from there on. As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts' minds unite to build a church that shall be free. Free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless creed. Free from the social code that fails to serve the cause of human need. A freedom that reverses the past, but trusts, that reveres the past, thank you. A freedom that reveres the past, but trusts the drawing future more, and bids the soul and search for truth, adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic Church, the future awaits your liberating ministry. Go forth in power and love, proclaim the truth that makes us free. Thank you. Go in peace. There is coffee and refreshments over that way.